there's something that is, more than building a $1.5 to $2 million townhome, in exchange for that. When there are goals of the town that, and this site is to me is quite unique, and it's, almost 25,000 square feet, and the one per 5,000 density, 1 unit per 5,000 density. There's, 4,700 square feet that's being left on the table here. And to have the ability to modify, you know, the density regulations to say, for example, 1 to 4,000 to get to 6 units, to get to, some way of drafting it to get to inclusionary housing. Um, you know, then I think the doors open on potentially many forms of, site relief, site plan relief, to achieve that goal. But I'm concerned just if we are going to keep it in, then, it needs to be narrowly tailored so it doesn't open the gate for everybody to come in and start building, more market rate, which again, overall would hurt our denominator, I think, in terms of the 2028 moratorium that I'm sure we're going to apply for.
Put up the POCD slide that we have. I'd respectfully disagree with you on compliance with the POCD. I think we lay out some of the criteria there, and I think it's the perfect fit for the apartment zone. It's multifamily use. It's close to town. It supports elder use. I think it's going to be an older population probably that is going to be buying these units. It adds to a diverse portfolio of units within the zone. We're near town, we're near trains, we're near shopping, we can walk into town. So I think we do fit within the criteria of the POCD, but I do agree with you on your thoughts on affordable housing, particularly in the apartment zone. I mean, if this commission decides as a part of the revamping of zoning to really look at apartment zone or other zones and give the ability of an owner of a property to increase density, increase height, setbacks, buffers, I'd be the first person to testify in front of the commission that night. I think that should be looked at. However, I do know that I think my opinion would be disagreed with by many in town. So that's, I think, the balance that you always try to strike. There's certain parts of the apartment zone perhaps that might support a lot more density, but I really don't think that this site does, respectfully.
Commissioners, anything further? Anything further, Mr. Sweeney?
I don't think so. No, thank you.
Thank you. Opening this up to the public. Is there anyone? Please come up to the podium, state your name and address.
Good evening. Charles Otto, OTTO, 205 Main Street, which is Cobbler's Green, number 31. And I came here tonight because originally I was concerned strictly about drainage. 100-year storms seem to be happening a lot more frequently than that. I got a letter from the attorneys who were working with the project, and the letters gave me some information, but I didn't hear anything else. And then 2 days later, my basement was underwater. And I think it's imperative that the developer spend a little time talking with the neighbors who are going to be directly affected by storm runoff. I haven't heard anything. And I don't want to sound completely negative, because I've admired Mr. Sillo's work at the intersection of Green and Church Street. Nice job. But now that I'm here, I have another concern, and that has to do specifically with parking. Where I live, I don't know if I could get that back up that shows the area. I'm concerned about the northeast corner. Specifically, okay, with parking, can you show me parking?
And if you have my
Is this
plan set
area
up,
here
it's the
going
first
to be
page.
green space?
There you go.
Ah, that's much better. This will be green space here. I predict that that will be a casualty very, very shortly. Because for trucks, I have experience with loading docks in buildings. For,
You have to come back to the microphone.
sure. You see the area that I'm talking about right there with, on that building that's closest to our property. And I live right there in the northeast corner. Trucks aren't going to be able to turn around there because, for one thing, what seems to be absent from the projections about parking is the fact that people don't park in their garages. Just drive over to Cobbler's Green, go and take a look. People leave their cars in front of their apartments. They don't go into the garage every time. There's not going to be enough room for the mailman, the Amazon person to turn around. So what's going to happen, I predict, is going to be that small nub of green space, and maybe even something closer to us is going to turn into pavement. And that's really where I'm coming from. I worry about drainage. I really would wish that there would be a concerted effort to have somebody sit down with the neighbors on the Cobbler's Green side and talk about drainage. I was intrigued by the West Road discussion about drainage. And I don't appreciate the fact that I'm probably going to spend my golden years mopping out my basement when the storm of the century occurs every couple of years. So far, I'm not convinced that there has been a serious way to mediate the drainage that's going to occur when this is all paved over and basements are built, and I'm really very concerned about it. And it seems to me that I shouldn't have to take the initiative to go hunt around and find somebody to tell me that my fears are really unwarranted. Seems to me, as good neighbors, and one of the things that's amazed me about this town, I have worked and lived in this town since March of 1977, with a brief period when I was out of town. And the concern for neighbors and the well-being of neighbors, I think, is remarkable in this town. I've lived and seen a lot of other places where it just doesn't happen. Some of you who know me know that for 16 years, I was executive director of Waveney Care Center. And for another 9 years, I had the privilege of teaching Mr. Sillo as a teacher at New Canaan High School. I think he'd do a fine job with the buildings, but let's get the drainage thing squared away. And please, let's not knock off that tiny little nub that's there so that the Amazon truck can turn around, because it ain't going to happen. There are too many cars that are going to be parked outside of the condos. They're not going to be parked in the garages. And that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak? Come up to the podium and state your name.
Hi, my name is Ann DeFrancesco. My sister Nina and I live in Cobbler's Green, 205 Main Street. Our unit number is 35. If you look at these 3 bottom trees here, our unit is directly behind the 4th building. I understand where Charlie's coming from, because in a way we kind of felt blindsided as well. It wasn't until we got the letter, and then there's only a week until the meeting tonight, where we had an announcement that anything was going to even happen over on that property. And that's, I understand that. But there are many questions that we had as abutting neighbors, including my neighbors in Cobblers about exactly what the plan was for this property. As you know, it has 2 buildings on it presently, though that's going to 4 buildings. They're taking up an awful lot of room. We already have a drainage issue back there for many reasons. One, because the property slants towards Cobbler's Green. 2, there is no drainage system in place there. The last Sunday's storm is a perfect example. Water running down so fast, it completely flooded our patio and our whole yard. Not that we have such a large yard, but it's still, and it took a day for the water to be absorbed into the ground. So my sister and I are very concerned about the drainage plan that you have proposed, and we would hope that the commission or the professionals who have designed the plan would be able to reassure us that we will not have a flood in our unit or our basement. We have lived at Cobbler's Green for 11 and a half years, and we have never had water damage in our unit. However, as I mentioned just now, our patio floods, a lot because of the very heavy storm we had, not so much when we have a usual rainfall. We are concerned about a number of other things. As just FYI, we submitted to Sarah some photographs and a video of the storm from last week, so you would have some kind of an idea of what happened in Cobblers. I'm not sure that you are aware of other things going on the other side of the fence. The professionals that we spoke to seem to concentrate on just the property that they were developing. The drainage problem that we've had from this property already is creating a sinkhole on my neighbor's property. That's the property that's Cobbler's property that's adjacent to us. I'm not sure that you guys are even aware of that or have been able to take that into consideration. That southeast corner of the property here is the lowest point on that property, and water has a tendency to just accumulate there. What would we be thinking about doing for that? Because it's only a question of time that it's going to make its way under the fence and continue to flood Cobbler's Green property. So these are just a few things that I as a unit homeowner here in New Canaan were concerned about. We're not against the proposal. We just want to make sure that our quality of living will remain intact as it has been over the past 11 and a half years. I had some other questions about the sump pumps and stuff, but I don't have to go through those tonight. My last request is for Mr. Stout. Again, this is my unit. My sister and I are avid gardeners, and although it's a small space, we have planted a garden back there. So we were wondering if you would consider not so much a heavy buffer that would take away the sunlight that we have in our yard. We have sun in our yard. We were hoping that instead of like those big tall thuja arborvitaes, perhaps you could put something lower. The fence is 8 feet, maybe not more than 8 or 10 feet. It's not necessary for us to have like a 30-foot trees separating us. We would rather still be able to have some sun on our patio and not have to rip out the landscaping that we put in many years ago. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else from the public? Thank you. Come up and to podium, state your name and address, please.
I'm Chris Phillips. I'm over at Cobbler's Green. I'm an engineer, and I actually met with the Sillos and went over all these plans as much as I could in a few hours. I think the plan is actually a very good plan. We didn't see any I think the presentation was pretty poor, though. We didn't see any architecturals. The architecturals look good. I think some of the explanations about the other work was poor. I'll go through that in a second. I think the density is fine. 4 units here is a really good plan for the town. They might have been able to squeeze in 5. Doesn't work. They might have been able to squeeze in 20. Some of you guys want 20. It doesn't work on this site. It doesn't work for this town. As much as you'd like moderate price housing, this is not an appropriate site to make that work. It doesn't have the geometry or the resources or the space to jam in 4-story building here. It doesn't work on this site. I think you guys actually spent a long time deciding whether you had the ability to decide on whether a rec buffer, you could change a rec buffer. I think you guys could change anything you want. Make the buffer what you want. I can't understand. I don't know why we talked an hour about that. They have a recreation plan. It works. Does it meet the square box that you need? Who cares? They put it on the plan. So I'm not really understanding your technical problems with deciding what's a special permit or a variance or how to deal with this, a very minor issue that sounds like this is a good plan, approve it tonight. There's 4 units. Some of the technical things that I think you didn't cover very well. I think the traffic guy that says there's going to be 6 vehicles on this site, better go out there and study some traffic. Come to Cobbler's Green. Everybody has 2 cars. The parking is a problem. The visitors are a problem. You got to go do your homework better. If you could squeeze some more parking on here, that would be great. I understand the site doesn't really work. People are going to drive in and they're going to drive out. They're going to back out. That's a problem. But it's better than what's there. You're getting rid of a commercial use that generates more traffic. It gets rid of 3 crappy apartments and builds some nice housing over there. So the density and the proposal here is actually a very good thing for the town. 3-point turns, there's no way there's 3-point turns. They're backing out. That's what it is. It's never going to be any different. I'm a little concerned about the drainage. I went over all the drainage with everybody. I'm sort of satisfied it's going in the right direction. I don't understand some parts of the plan. I want to make sure that the curbing, what kind of curbing is it? Is there a curbing? It looks like the plan has curbing to direct the water to the system. It's critical that that happens. So you ought to mark that on the plan, or you ought to talk about how the water gets into the system. The roadway drains into a catch and into the Coltech units. That's great. The Coltex units are very narrow. You need to make sure there's some maintenance agreements to keep those guys cleaned out, because over the years they're going to fill with crap and they're going to not work. I agree with the town and their 100-year plan. I think that's adequate. I tried to explain to some of our neighbors that a 100-year drainage plan is the best you're going to do. It's great. What's there now is terrible. What's down there doesn't work. It's why you have flooding now. When these guys are done, they're going to have a plan that works. They're going to solve a big drainage problem for all the neighbors. I think it's a great plan. I think the fact that it went to 100 is great. I mean, if you can get all the water into those Coltech units, that's awesome. I think the plan should show where the water, the sewer, the gas, the generator, the air conditioning units are all going to go. There's no way you're cramming a generator between a 6-foot unit. There's no way you're going to cram air conditioner units in there. If the generators are going on our side, I'd like to request that you put some soundproofing barriers on there, and so that we don't have to listen to those. If these guys have full basements, the basements looks like there's some kind of marks for sump pumps. I don't really understand what an outside sump pump is. So that's not really clear on your engineering plan. That was one of my questions. There's something that says sump pump. I'm assuming the sump pump pumps footing drains, but I don't know. If the basement is going to have a sump pump to pump out, I'm pretty sure you're going to need some kind of generator so that the thing works when there's water in there, or when the sewer system, which we didn't talk about, gets pumped to South Ave. If you don't have power, you don't have sewer, goes in your basement. So I'm pretty sure you're going to need a generator. It's not a gravity system. That should show on the plan. Lastly, we do have differences. I think we should make sure that the green space is green space, so that anything where there's topsoil or material that's going on top of these Coltech units turns into grass and doesn't turn into something else. And I mean, they're very shallow units. I just want to make sure that they work in the back as well as everybody else here. And as far as the landscaping, I think the landscaping, I'm more a favor. This is a personal thing, but I'm on that side. I like the high plants. If she wants the low plants on her side, that's an accommodation you guys can work out, but I wouldn't automatically say that's a given on low planting for everybody. And anyway, and my thing is, I think this is appropriate density. I don't think it works with 2. I don't think it works with 1 house. I don't think it works with 3 houses. I think 4 does the right job here. It gets the math to work. I don't want somebody else coming in here and asking for 20. And I don't want you guys thinking 20 is a good idea when it's not a good idea. So I think this should be I think this should be a go. I think you should have this thing, approved tonight. Thanks.
Thank you.
Provide some clarification on the landscaping heights. The apartment zone regulations require that the heights of the plants in the landscape buffer be at least 10 feet tall, so you can't vary it lower. And after 10 feet, it's really up to the applicant, I would say.
Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak? Anybody in Zoom world that would like to speak? Okay. What I would ask, obviously we heard from a few of the neighbors in terms of the drainage and the concerns on the drainage plan. Would you be able to bring up the drainage plan back up to the screen? That shows the catch containment Coltech basins, and I think it's the last sheet in the deck. It's third and
No, before that, sorry.
there it is. Third sheet,
One more up, sorry.
right?
One sheet before that. There you go. That's the one.
That one. So could you, just to satisfy the members of the neighbors that are in the audience, could you go up to the screen and just explain the different Coltechs and how it's working and how it's staging the dissipation of the water as it's going through the site?
Yeah, I can. See.
Hi, good evening. Avon Bauer again with Crucidis Engineering. So what we have designed for these, each of these buildings has their own drainage system, as I mentioned. That's sitting right here behind all of these, as well as 2 significant systems in the back. And what those 2 systems in the back are to do is one of them collects the rear building and the other one collects all the impervious area from the driveway. So a lot of the water that was coming down during that storm last week was untreated. It was there was no mitigation measures on our property. We can't unfortunately change the topography of a whole watershed. We can only impact and improve our own property, which is what we're trying to do. By detaining up to the 100-year storm event, we're going to help alleviate some of that pressure that comes down into that low spot. Unfortunately, that low spot has several properties draining to it. I don't exactly know how many without doing a full watershed analysis, but it's more than just our property that is directed towards Cobbler's Green. So unfortunately, we can only do what we can do on our own property. And like I said, those 2 systems down at the low end, they don't overflow in that 100-year storm event, meaning that if we get that kind of rainfall, all the water will infiltrate down into the ground as opposed to flowing out and becoming surface water that winds its way to Cobbler's Green. One of the other questions posed was that, yes, we are proposing curbing along the entirety of the driveway on both sides, basically up to within a few feet of the property line, just because can't have it in the right of way. And that's directed to those 2 catch basins that are, as Dan points out, on the north end of the property. And what those catch basins do is they collect that entire driveway. So none of that with the curbing established will not overtop or go onto the adjacent properties. We can certainly show the locations of the generators on an amended plan prior to a building permit. And 2 of the other items that were brought up was the grass that's going to be over the drainage. Yes, that is all proposed to be grass right now. And I know there was a concern over parking being put over where those drainage units are, but there is landscaping to kind of prevent that from happening, as well as the curbing. It's a 6-inch, most likely a Belgian block curb or asphalt curb that's going to stop vehicles from being able to easily traverse and get up into that area. And, the one other issue you brought up was that there was no, maintenance plan. We did actually submit a maintenance plan that was approved by the engineering department for long-term maintenance of these drainage infrastructures, including instructions to how to clean it out and how often it should be serviced and, maintained, just to make sure that they're continually functioning through the life of the project and beyond. Yes, that was the last thing I was gonna say is, so the sump pump circles are to collect, yes, the footing drains from each of the basements. I don't believe they're 10 feet below grade. I think there is a 10-foot difference between the first and basement slab, but that includes about a foot of floor joist as well as 2 feet from the first floor to grade in most cases. So they're about 7 or 8 feet below. And what those footing drains, the sump pumps are to do is to collect the water from those footing drains, and we're pumping it up to the front of the property, which will then overflow into South Avenue as opposed to, flowing back down into Cobbler's Green or anywhere else.
And how come there are 2 sump pumps for each house?
So each house has 2 different some of them have 2 different sump pumps. And the reason being, as you get lower on the property, we aren't able to attach to the sewer by gravity. So 2 of those are for the sanitary sewer system, and then each house has its own independent sump pump system for the footing drains. Oh, yes, yeah. So we have gone over this with Maria a couple times. Like I said, we kind of went back and forth a few times, and she did issue an approval on, I believe, 8/9/24 for these amended plans, which is designed for the 100-year flood event, as opposed to, excuse me, the stormwater event, as opposed to the original 25-year design that we had. That's probably a discussion we would have prior to, once we get the approval through the commission or anything else. We will have to probably revise our plans and come back with a complete plan set, at which point that will all be addressed.
There's also the letter from the town engineer, Maria Couplet. There was 9 different items, some of which you already touched on. Have all of these been satisfied at this point?
Everything that she wanted prior to this hearing has been satisfied. There were a few conditions that require a little additional work that are conditions of prior to a building permit.
I see. Okay.
The things of nature of connection into the storm in the street and whatnot, because that requires additional permitting through the DOT.
Got it. Thank you.
I have a question, if I may, Mr. Chairman. One of the neighbors talked about the driveway now. So how wide is it, and can 2 cars pass?
I believe it's 14 feet wide, and yeah, it's a little tight, but 2 cars should be able to pass by if needed.
Have you done any studies on the ability to you're pulling out of your, let's say you head into your garage, you are going to back out of your garage, you're going to have to make a turn, and you want to point out of the driveway. Have you done studies on the ability to do that, given car sizes and, something besides a compact? Some of the cars can get kind of big.
So yeah, as you can see, as you get further down into the property, that turning maneuverability becomes a lot easier. We do meet the requirements for back out space for the driveways, or for the garages, excuse me. But obviously the bigger vehicles are going to have a much easier time as you go further down the property, just because there is more space, unfortunately, due to the narrow size of the lot and the way it kind of fans out as you go from South Avenue beyond.
Thank you.
I personally still have a concern over the total amount of parking, specifically visitor parking on the property, and turnaround for the trucks. So is there a possibility of modifying the 2 parking spots at the visitor spots at the rear, playing with the boundaries of both sides of those parking spots to get 3 parking spots out of that area, thereby giving a larger turnaround area for a truck that may come in, a delivery truck that might come in, as well as an additional visitor parking spot?
There's not a whole lot of space to move back there, because we do have certain restrictions as far as, creating that planting buffer. We were trying to create as much buffer area to the north as possible. So expanding that parking not only is, a little issue with the coverage, but there's not a lot of, in order to kind of squeeze everything in as far, with the building and adding landscaping as well, the more we push that encroachment over, the harder it becomes to actually meet the other requirements that we need to meet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Final call, anyone from the public that wants to speak? Mr. Sweeney, anything further?
To sum up, I think Mr. Bauer answered all the questions on drainage well. I think to Mr. Otto, Mr. Solo's teacher, Mr. Otto, we did try to engage with the neighbors, and I hope you don't feel that we did anything other, but we sent out notices, and we did get calls from the DeFrancescos, and we met with them and we went over it, but we hope we answered all your questions this evening. But one thing I can assure you that if you're concerned about, the plan morphing and, parking expanding or loss of green area, that can't happen. What's approved by the commission is in stone, and we can't deviate from that. So we can't morph it into something different than what would be approved by the commission. The drainage issues, I know we spoke to that, and certainly nothing that we're going to be doing here will be exacerbating any problems that you have already, but as Mr. Bauer testified, they'll be improving the situation. We comply with the parking requirements. Normally what I do when we draft condominium documents is we require parking to be in garages. We require that maintenance of all systems be done by the condominium association. Usually we incorporate all the documents, the site plan, the conditions of approval into the condo docs, and then the association is required, with its board to pick up those obligations. I think that's all I have. If we should have any other questions.
Can you call up the most current landscaping plan from Mr. Stout's office? Okay, so I'm sorry to dwell on it, but I feel strongly about this parking issue and the availability of parking, but from what I'm seeing, there's a retaining wall along the north edge and northeast corner. There's 3 existing maple trees to remain, correct? There's no additional planting happening between that curbing and the existing retaining wall, correct?
Correct.
Right, so there's nothing preventing us from widening or shifting that curbing further towards the north, towards that retaining wall, as well as shifting the curbing that's on the south side of that edge. I understand it's in front of the 4th building unit, and it would reduce the amount of planting area in front of the 4th building unit, but there's nothing preventing you from modifying that and getting 3 parking spots out of that.
So one of the things that we can't do, because we're trying to preserve those three trees that exist, if we were to we can't just move the asphalt into a conforming parking space. We also need to consider adequate backout space from that parking spot as well. So yes, we might be able to actually fit a 9x18 space there, but we wouldn't be able to actually access it through backout without the removal of those trees.
Yeah, but the 2, I don't buy that, because the 2 existing parking spots, you're depending on the driveway apron of the 4th unit as the backup spot to be able to come back out. No different than the 3rd spot you would add.
Well, it's an issue of maneuverability, being able to
I
actually
understand
get
that.
into that spot.
Yeah, I get that.
So if I'm following you, Mr. Rabin, if we get to the end of the driveway, to expand to the north a tad, perhaps where that last tree is, and then perhaps expand to the south a little bit where there's a
Correct.
planting area in front of the building.
Correct.
Simply widen that area.
Do you have impervious coverage? Because
I
so
think we still,
apartment
I
zone,
think
you
we're
also
still
have
on,
coverage
I
requirements.
think we still may be under a tad so that do we have a little more elbow room on impervious
Yeah,
coverage?
so by my calculations, we are about at 49.3% coverage, with the 50%, I think, being the maximum that we're allowed. We might be able to shave off some places, but there's not really a lot that we can take away from the driveway right now to expand it, to maintain that width.
He's trying to. Gotta get 3 spaces to figure it out.
We're open to the notion, though, of expanding that area. I think as I'm thinking it through with you now, it makes sense to have more room at the end of the driveway. Right.
I think we'll leave it. We're not gonna be able to solve that tonight.
Well, we're bumping up against, coverage, impervious coverage problem too, because we're at 49 point something on that.
Mm.
We don't want to decrease the width of the driveway anywhere else, with the parking in front, and I don't think we want to make the patios any smaller.
I don't have the dimensions, but could that last unit just come further toward the southeast corner to give you more space?
Right up against the property
We're right up
setback.
against the setback lines
Right
with
on the
almost all
setback
these
line.
buildings.
On the setback.
What you could do is change the parking area only to permeable paving.
Can you put 2 parking spots in the very front by the sidewalk?
I'm sorry?
Can you put 2 parking spots in the very front by the sidewalk, the front sidewalk? And make it like a little courtyard or something?
Yeah, we don't want to encourage that.
Okay.
That's into the front setback area. But if you were to change those potential 3 parking spots in that rear area to permeable pavers, it doesn't have to be permeable asphalt, it could be cobblestones, it could be anything, right? I mean, it could be decorative. That buys you a lot of coverage.
Does that affect our drainage plan at all by just making that last parking area?
No, we could definitely analyze it as pervious and create some sort of, I'd have to go over with Sarah and perhaps Maria, the exact specifications for what you would consider pervious pavement and how you would view it, because do you see something as simple as a gravel area as pervious, or does it need to be, with some sort of detention below it as well?
I know, for the drainage policy, the town engineer considers gravel as impervious.
Gravel is impervious.
So I don't know how she models, pervious pavers.
But we can keep the drainage the same.
They're pavers, and then
Yeah.
you have the reservoir.
With, I was gonna say something.
Just want to highlight the actual requirement for
That's
the
what I was gonna
apartment
say.
zone is actually minimum landscaped area is 50%. So
That's what
I
I
don't
saw.
think permeable pavers count as landscaped area.
Hmm.
So they're still,
That was
So-
kind of where I
so
was
yeah.
going with this, is trying to figure
So
out
the-
if it would even count as a benefit to us in that case.
doesn't act as a benefit because you still have to have 50% be landscaped on the whole site. So the permeable paver argument does not help. If this was an impervious coverage area maximum, I think it would work,
Change,
but
yeah.
this is minimum landscaped area, 50% of the lot area.
So Sarah, this is Commissioner Chris, if they're part of the lawn is taken up by a parking spot, you're saying you drop below the landscape area?
Sounds like.
You're 40.
Yeah, we're 49.3% coverage. I
Yeah,
mean, we
it's
have
pretty
very, very little to work with, maybe a couple hundred square feet. But a 9 by 18 parking spaces would definitely put us over by doing another one.
Mm.
So I would remind the commission that they meet the zoning requirements for parking, and you typically can't hold them to a higher standard. So you can make recommendations, but saying we don't agree with our zoning regulations and
Yeah.
try.
Well,
Hold them
couldn't
above-
they modify their special permit request to include that? As an additional waiver?
That's additional
That
responsibility.
wouldn't be a waiver, that would be requesting, hey, can we go above and beyond what your regulations say? You're,
I think he's referring to the 50% coverage or 50% landscape. But that's,
I see, yeah, you could add that.
We're
I
here,
don't-
aren't we?
Yeah, we're already there. I mean, I understand that the visitor parking is not a specific requirement in the apartment zone. But all of us in this room, it's the elephant in the room. We all know that the parking is going to be tight here. You're not going to be able to fit a car in front of the garage and allow other cars to pass. It's just not going to happen. So you're going to end up with bottlenecks here no matter what. And to help it, to provide that additional parking spot in the back will help it.
This is Commissioner Chris, I mean, if there are 2 cars parked there and I'm in that end unit, I don't know how I get out. I can't do I'd have to maybe try to do a U-ey into the maybe make it into the sort of driveway of my neighbor and then turn left. I'm trying to figure that out now.
Is that something AKRF looked
Back
into?
out onto South Avenue, that's no, that's not good. It's snug.
Mhm.
It's definitely snug, you know, Mr. Barr testified to that, but he also testified that we meet the turnaround requirements. So we're not violative of that. So to the extent there's an improvement we can make to this, you know, we're certainly open to that. We didn't think of something, but we just gotta make sure we don't help one issue and cause a problems with another requirement.
Okay. Commissioners, what would you like to do? Do we close this application or do we ask them to come back with a modified site plan showing a revised parking area?
If I can, forgive me for interrupting, Mr. Radman, the only thing I'd mention, and I'm always reluctant to do this, but I do need to mention it, that Mr. Sillo's contract purchaser on this property, he's under contract to acquire it, very tight timelines in order, it's certainly not the problem with this commission, but I want to make you aware of it. To the extent that we can close the hearing, anything that needs to be done by way of condition, you know, we certainly can agree to that. But if we can close the hearing and ideally even get a decision, would be very important.
Commissioners, how do you feel?
Commissioner Chris, I'm okay closing it. I believe there'll probably be some conditions. And again, because it's closed, we can't negotiate with the applicant. But I can see some conditions being imposed, but I'm okay closing it at this point. That's me.
Sarah, if the only way to get the additional parking is by a modification of the landscaping 50% requirement, that would require a change to the application, correct?
To the
To the
text-
language.
To the text amendment, would you have the authority to do as the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Which we can do tonight.
We can, but it's 11 o'clock. Like, are we really gonna be making, I mean, I'm not against it. I'm just saying, like, we've got other applications to vote on, and then we've got to figure out how to massage a text amendment, potentially redesign the site.
So keep it open till next week, next month?
Or you could, as a condition of approval, request that they come back at a future date with a, you know, change to the application addressing this. So, you know, you did it with the library, you made them after a year, and after 6 months, come back for various additional approvals. You could do the same thing.
I mean, we'd be open to that. I mean, and frankly, just to, again, to be frank, is that if we know that we have an approval, even if subject to coming back and reviewing the parking area at a future date, at least we knew that, you know, the application had been approved and that we can go forward with our transaction. We're happy to come back again to address particularly Mr. Radman's question about parking.
I'm fine with that. Okay. Commissioners, are you good with that?
Yes.
Can I just ask on the equipment side, would they also have to follow up on where the equipment goes and how they're gonna handle the noise? Can that
That's
be handled
one
as
of the
a condition?
conditions. That can be a condition of approval.
It would be addressed, the location would be addressed regardless, because we can't sign off on a building permit without knowing the location of the mechanicals, so that
Okay.
would be a given.
That's understood.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
This application's closed. See if we can roll through these. Mr. Sweeney? Mr. Sweeney? Mr. Sweeney?
Take it outside.
Thank you.
Can you just move everyone away from the door as well? No, you can stay, but just, conversation with.
All right, commissioners, let's get through this. First one thing we need to vote on is 107 Main Street, which was the leftover from the earlier meeting.
No, didn't you vote on that?
We approved that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we did. I'm sorry.
Yep.
It was
Curtis
45.
Nielsen.
Yeah, we did. 45 Oak Street. Or 56.
56
56 Brooks.
56 Brooks Road.
56 Brooks.
I'm
So-
gonna sit in the audience as I recuse myself from this.
Sure. 56 Brooks, this is the small house addition of 170 square feet on the back of the house. And them using section 3.7E encumbering that 170 square feet to get the additional 50 to 54 square feet that they were looking for. I think this is the correct application of this particular regulation. It's exactly how we like to see it get used. I think the proposed work is very minor in terms of the context of the building, and the scope of the work. I'm personally, I'm in support of this one, no issues.
I agree. I think that this is, again, exactly the reason that regulation exists. It's caused us a lot of trouble over the last several years, but it's good to see when it works. And so I'm also in favor of this one.
Commissioners, anyone else have any comments on this one? Okay, do I hear a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Here. Okay, call to vote. I vote yes. Krista Nielsen,
Yes.
John Chris, I'm sorry, recused. John Engel,
Yes.
Paul Knag,
Yes.
Tom Benton,
Yes.
Christina Larson,
Yes.
and Eric Knowles.
Yes.
Great, that one passes. Okay, 45 Oak Street. This is the 6-foot high retaining wall at the back of that property. Again, 6-foot retaining wall, but the applicant and the owner have agreed that they'll clad the concrete structural retaining wall in veneer fieldstone. It'll have fieldstone on top, so aesthetically it'll be appropriate. The rest of the context of the scope of that work is all within regulations. It was strictly the height of the wall that we're responding to here. Do I have a motion on this one, or any deliberation on it?
Can I just say two things?
Yep.
I still stand by my thought that I don't think it's our responsibility to give everyone the backyard of their dreams. And I would like to see people become more sensitive to work with the topography and the drainage on their property as opposed to against it. I'll feel probably like a broken record by the time we're done deliberating this evening. I also think this property is a perfect example of why in the future we need to consider impervious coverage regulations, because once this is all said and done, basically this entire property will be covered in hardscape. So those are my two things. That being said, the regulations exist as they do, and I'm not going to oppose it, but I don't love it.
I would just note that the town engineer would prefer if there's a condition on the approval that they must comply with the 100-year, with the updated drainage policy as of July 1, because if you read her comments and then if you heard what the applicant was saying, it seemed like
There's a little
there was a
dispute.
little dispute, so giving her that enforcement power to ensure that they have to comply
Agreed.
with the July 1 drainage policy, I recommend that.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve with 3 conditions. One is that, as Ms. Carey said, that the property must comply per the town engineer with a 100-year drainage policy. 2, the wall would be clad in natural stone in such a manner as to match as closely as possible the existing wall by the driveway. I think that's the right wall. And 3rd, I'd still talk about the trees. It would be all green giant. I don't think you could be able to deal with the hornbeam unless you could really trim it really hard, and it's gonna be awkward to get in there, and it's just logistically challenging. Those would be my 3 conditions, Mr. Chairman. That's my motion.
Do I have a second?
I don't think it's in our place to to tell them that whether to do the horn beams or not, John. I really don't think that's an appropriate condition. Just because you feel so that way about the horn beam, but it's not in our regulations, and you haven't really articulated a legitimate reason for excluding an applicant's, choice of tree.
I would disagree, Commissioner. I think these are much too large trees given the boxed-in area they have.
And I own 6 of these trees, or did, and I disagree with you. So,
There are many kinds of
it's a personal preference.
there are many kinds of hornbeams, but the one they want is not one of them.
Is there a second on the motion?
No.
Anybody else? Second on the motion? Am I allowed to second it?
Yeah, you can, yeah.
I'll second it. I call to vote. I vote yes. Krista Nielsen,
Yes.
John Chris,
Yes.
John Engel,
No.
Paul Knag,
Yes.
Tom Benton,
Yes.
Christina Larson,
Yes.
and Eric Knowles.
Yes.
That was 45 Oak. Next one is 1102 Owen Oak Ridge. The small amount of fill that was proposed on this one. This is
The berm.
the berms with the, they're cutting 700 cubic yards of fill and adding 2,900 cubic yards. This one, I'm not a huge fan of. I don't know how much we can, by comparison, in terms of cubic yards, looking at 928 West, this is almost minuscule, right? But they are creating a substantial difference in the topography. I don't know if we can necessarily, how much we can control that. What I am specifically concerned about is there's sort of a gray area as to how much of the landscaping they're taking down and how much they're putting back. We saw the plan, but I didn't get firm answers from them. Should we be overly concerned about it? I don't know, maybe. But my concern really lies in the fact that they're elevating and filling and creating these berms. And as we all know, with existing trees in certain places, you can't just bury the trunks, right? They die. So I think it's a little bit of a misleading statement to say, well, we're going to keep as many of these trees as we can when they're creating these, what look like 4 huge berms right in the middle of some of the trees they're trying to keep.
So I will say there is a plan that they had filed that marks every single tree above a certain caliper and marks whether it's to be removed or to stay. So I think asking for that number should really be a click of a button for the engineer.
Should
Since
be.
they already have a plan that shows every single tree on the property,
Hmm.
whether they're removing it or not. So I think that's simple enough to get. It's just, what do you do with that information once it's receive? Do you put a condition on that they provide me with that number and we ensure that trees are being removed or replaced on the property? Do you have regulate, like, does the special permit criteria justify that type of condition? So what do you do with that information? We can get it, but what do you do with it?
I think it's more a concern of them representing a certain composition of existing versus new trees on the property as presented, and ensuring that they can actually satisfy that. Right? That trees that are to remain don't get buried and die, or somewhere along the line, they decide or they figure out that they're gonna have to cut down more than they were proposed. I guess we just have to hold their feet to the fire on what they've submitted.
That's what you do with all applications.
So
Sorry.
Sarah, you have this plan? Like it's submitted, it's online.
Yeah, it's online. It was pulled up. It's just you can't see it from the TV, but they're very clearly it's marked. If they're
Existing and-
shaded, they're being removed. If they're
That one with the
not-
circles.
Yeah, with the halos.
I think we've all been through projects, so I mean, you can say all you want, but if you bury the roots and you're inside the drip line, the trees won't last.
I mean, realistically, on these full development projects like this, they're pulling the stumps. They're not burying the roots. They're pulling the
Oh, no,
stumps,
no,
and
I'm
they're
not worried
The
about that.
trees they want to keep.
I'm worried about trees they want to keep.
Level of disruption on the property, you're gonna have a hard time keeping those trees.
I understand. I mean, this is Commissioner Chris, their whole tone was we're looking for privacy, and they seem very sensitive to the natural landscape to assist them in generating privacy. So my own guess is, given that goal, they're going to be very sensitive about killing healthy, relatively large trees on their property that are doing the things they want to have them do as far as privacy. So my sense is that will happen, or at least there's a reasonable likelihood it will, given their goals. And they seem pretty wed to that idea of privacy. So that's me. I'm not particularly worried about it. And it's not going to happen for one or two, but any construction, you know, some trees are going to get it and not some others. It's just the way it goes.
I just want to mention, we didn't talk about the drainage very much when we had their attention, but just looking at some of their proposals for that, they do discuss some ponding and some rain gardens, which I don't totally understand on their drainage policy. I just didn't know if we need to look at that anymore. Some of the berms will create some ponding, it said.
Yes, they, similar to the 928 West Road application, they are proposing rain gardens as well, but that isn't really within the purview of this application. This application is really about the berm, and that's what's triggering the special permit, not the detention pond. So they didn't really touch on it for that reason.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just say again, I don't like it, but I don't know that there's any reason for us to deny it. I mean, I could argue that this is affecting the natural, scenic, historic, and unique environmental resources of the area by changing the topography, but I don't know how strong an argument that is. But I do think that as a commission, we need to start to think about, like, what's the upper limit of what's okay in terms of grading, in terms of retaining walls, because each month, it feels like it's getting pushed further and further. And I don't know where we draw the line, and I don't know that it's here tonight, but I just think it's kind of crazy.
I also think the line has to be drawn with the zoning regulation
yeah.
update, not by denying an application.
Oh, yeah,
per se.
completely.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
on a philosophical level, at some
Yeah.
point, we have to confront, like, where's our boundary?
Which is
Well,
this is why we want to
whole
update the
mentality
regs.
of residential development has taken a turn in that, you know, any site, regardless of size, is so malleable, they just, you know, change the topography to whatever they want.
Right.
Be it berms or retaining walls or whatever it is. If I want a football field in the back of my yard, I'm gonna do it. Cause I
And you-
can,
and you can engineer a
and
solution.
you can engineer a solution,
most
whereas,
anything.
you know, like
Agree.
in years past, you work with the topography that you have on your lot, or you buy a different lot.
Right.
It's why can't I have my pool house, pool, sports court, and then something else?
Flat backyard.
Flat backyard. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I can't think of any conditions we can put on this other than other than getting a tally of the new versus removed trees.
So there was also, when Kathleen, reviewed this application, she recommended that, additional soil and erosion controls be required and added to the site plan, along with the routine monitoring by the engineer of record reporting to P and Z staff and the town engineer.
What type of monitoring?
Routine,
Routine?
yeah, of the soil and erosion control. So routine is typically bi-weekly, and then after rainfall events greater than 1 inch in 24 hours.
Okay. Commissioners, anything further on this one? Do I hear a motion on this one?
As Commissioner Chris, I move we approve with the condition as just stated by Ms. Carey.
What about the trees?
Do we also want the inventory of trees to be removed and trees to be planted? Do we care?
If you put that condition on, I would just like clarification. What happens if they change their mind? Like not even that that they're making it worse per se, but let's say they realize that they need to tear down 10 more and they're gonna replace it with 5 more than what's initially proposed. Because it's a condition of approval, I can't modify conditions of approval. So then if they change that number, do they have to come back to the commission to be blessed with that number, or what happens when it changes? Because I'm sure it's going to change.
I guess we can leave it out.
I'm willing to give it up on this. Again, I think that it'd be reasonably diligent, given that their goal is privacy. I'm okay. So that's me.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Anybody?
Engel, second.
Okay. Call to vote for 1102 Owen Oak Ridge. Dan Radman, I vote yes. Krista Nielsen,
Yes.
John Kriz,
Yes.
John Engel,
Yes.
Paul Knag,
Yes.
Tom Benton,
Yes.
Christina Larson,
Yes.
Eric Knowles.
Yes.
Okay, that one passes. 928 West Road. So this one's, these were the big numbers, right? We're looking at 7,000 square yards already, 300 truckloads already brought in, with another 11,000 square yards, with another 400 truckloads already planned. I know the site well. I drive by it often. I can see where that soil is going to go, and given, I mean, the entirety of that property, probably 3 acres of it has already been cleared by the prior owner. It's just level land, and it's a basin. So I get what they're doing. It doesn't seem, even though the numbers are pretty extreme, there's a lot of area that they're trying to cover, but they're only 2 feet above the street line. It's not like they're making a huge monument here. And it looks like a lot of that soil is going towards creating the rain gardens, the basins, creating those pools on both the north and south side of the property.
I can attest to they have filled the bowl. So
They
like
what?
they have filled the bowl that was previously there. Like it is filled in already. So the additional soil, I'm sure, is only for the detention basins.
Detention basins, yeah. To create the swells and the containment areas.
Sarah, in terms of violations, did they get anything for the first 7,000 cubic yards?
So I mean, the regulations are you pay for your application fee for this is double. And I may be able to double the building permit fee, but that's
So,
That's
so for them, doing what they did and now asking Mother May I, they don't
Yes,
get
they
any
paid
anything but a slap on the
400.
wrist.
Ticket. Stop there for a second. We're allowed to double the building permit fee as a penalty?
I don't know. I'll have to talk with the town attorney. It just says that, after the fact approvals must pay double the fee. So I mean, technically the approval is just a special permit approval, so maybe not. Because, so I mean, at this point, they paid $400 extra. That was the penalty. And I mean,
Probably not even one truckload.
Yeah, it's well worth.
The building permit fee on a 15,000 square foot house is
Yeah.
to be quite substantial.
I
And
just,
then-
I know, I see this all the time that, just go ahead and do it and ask for forgiveness later. And generally you get it, it's not, it's kind of just the way that it works. And, I don't know what other enforcement mechanism, and it's maybe not for this one, but something to consider, in future.
it is. And it's
rules.
definitely a struggle that the department deals with on a regular basis, but it's just kind of added to the list of the things we need to
Yeah.
address in the regulations.
Anything further on this one, commissioners?
If you're looking to punish them in a non-monetary way, then you hold open the application. And you basically punish him by delaying his application 30 days.
I mean, on the other side of the coin, I required that they submit an application as soon as possible to show that they, recognize that they were violating the zoning regulations. So I think me pressuring them to submit an application as soon as possible and then keeping it open for no specific reason, I don't really.
Who is the builder?
Woodcrest Homes, they've built others in New Canaan. They're building one right now, and essentially they blasted their last project, and my understanding is trucked it all in to this site. So it's New Canaan fill, but
I do like putting the condition of the route of delivery trucks for the balance. And it's less a concern about noise per se, but more concerned about that new bridge they just put in and trying to avoid, 30-ton trucks driving over that repeatedly on a daily basis for the next 2 months.
so I'm fine with it, but also one concern I have is enforcement.
I understand, but the applicant agreed to it,
No,
so
I hear
we should put it in there. Whether we can enforce it or not, and I agree, it's gonna be difficult, but
You had talked about route as well as time.
route as well as time, correct?
So what are can we talk through that a little more specifically? What
we said earlier was
Route off of Lost District and Owen Oak Ridge, right? Coming from the north.
No, you enter West Road off Owen Oak, then you take West Road. It's West Road is the joint, it's not Lost District.
West Road goes up to, is West Road?
It's West
Yeah,
Road,
'cause
then it
Lost District
jogs
goes to the
left.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's at that
We-
jog left that Lost
pull the
District
map.
begins.
actually know?
But do we
It's West
actually want to
Road.
design the route, or do we just want to say a condition is that they work with town
It's right
staff
by
to
that
come
old
up with a hauling
chapel.
plan?
I know where the chapel is.
So
I think all we have to say is deliveries are to, or the soil deliveries or construction deliveries are to occur from the north, coming from the north on West Road. Let them figure out the rest of the path.
we don't care if an empty truck goes south?
I think that's less of a concern.
How about construction deliveries will be from the enter West Road from its junction with Owen Oak. State, which is what, State Highway, what, 123?
No, 124.
124.
Smith Ridge is
124
Okay, but West Road
does meet it.
connects at a southern point as well. So you want to clarify.
The northern,
from the northern junction with State Route 124.
That's right.
And then the hours were
9 to 5, Monday through Friday.
Monday.
And no holidays and no,
Holidays.
Yeah, no, yes.
There was an ask for additional drainage study. Does anybody feel like that's required?
Well, we couldn't have closed the application if we wanted it, so.
I
That checks out.
mentioned the drainage study and then I was satisfied when I heard about the army of
Town-
people from town that went there and looked at it.
Yeah.
So I
Town
took their word
engineers
for it.
already blessed it.
I was satisfied with that. For what it's worth.
And can we just clarify with the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, no weekends? You're just talking about truck deliveries. Are you also trying to regulate construction on the site, or this is
No.
specifically just truck deliveries?
Mhm.
Okay. Just want to be clear.
And then the other condition was the one that Maria had about the relocation of
Yeah.
drainage pipe.
I would just say something, blanket statement, or I mean, we don't even have to because she's requiring it before a building permit's issued, so it.
All right, leave it happen.
That ship's gonna sail.
All right, do I have a motion on 928 West Road?
I mean, I can make the motion. Motion for approval with the conditions we made on the routing and the time. As we shared with Sarah.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Knag? Call to vote, Dan Radman, I vote yes. Krista Nielsen,
Yes.
John Chris,
Yes.
John Engel,
No,
Paul Knag,
Yes.
Tom Benton,
Yes.
Christina Larson,
Yes.
Eric Knowles.
yes.
Last but not least, 116 South Avenue.
Mr. Chairman, I think we have to deal with the text change first.
Yes, and and don't forget, you have to set an effective date
Yeah.
for the zoning regulation.
True. Yes, true.
Let me just call it up real quick. Text change, there it is. Should I read the text change just to,
The commission wants it read.
well, yeah, I think I should, just so everyone's clear on the item, and we are going to be eliminating one of the line items in here, so modification of the standard is, when considering a special permit application for new construction in a multifamily dwelling pursuant to section 54C2 of these regulations, the commission may reduce the required width of no more than one landscape side yard buffer and the required minimum area, dimensions, and boundary line requirements of the required recreational areas set forth in section 54D of these regulations when it finds that all of the following conditions have been satisfied. A, subject property is legally non-conforming as to lot width, provided that the property was in different ownership than all abutting land on December 15, 1956, and has continued to be in different ownership than all abutting land. B, the subject property will only be used for multifamily residential use. C, such modification will facilitate the creation of additional housing in furtherance of the purposes of the apartment zone set forth in section 54A. And then D, this is the one I think we're going to eliminate, which is such modification will facilitate the elimination of a legally non-conforming commercial use. That line we're going to strike.
I would object to that if this is going to be something that, I mean, I'm not going to reiterate what I said earlier in my kind of opinion on, approving this text amendment, and I don't think it's appropriately something that we should do, even if we had before. But if it is going to get approved, and that is the motion that's going to be made, doing this opens up more applicants to come and seek this special permit. right? Under the current text from what Mr. Sweeney said, there are one other site that may seek the special permit. If we're thinking of overhauling the entire apartment zone in how many ever months, why open up the ability for other property owners to come and use this special permit, which is almost kind of a placeholder until we make those large scale modifications? So I would say if the vote is leaning in the way of voting in favor of this, then it should be as narrow as possible, so it doesn't, so we can then take a look at this anew with a new POCD that guides us in how we want to deal with the apartment zone. Then, this, opening up what should be, a narrow, site specific, one or two site specific text amendment. That would be my suggestion.
I will say that, because when applicants are submitting their applications, they come to me for recommendations based on previous decisions from the commission, and they're, looking for opinions of what works with the POCD. And I will say I recommended to them that they keep it as narrow as possible based on decisions the commission has made recently on other text amendments. I mean, that's where the thought process of going so narrow was. And it was personally for me, keeping in mind that a larger zoning overhaul was, coming very soon. So why spend so much time trying to rework this when it will probably be reworked in a few months anyway?
I agree with all that, except I'm skeptical for how long it's going to take us to get this done.
I mean, so overall, I'm still philosophically against it, but if it's going to be done, it should be as limited as possible. I mean, he said it. We haven't opened this up since what, 1958, and now we're going to open it up for one site because of where they want to put, their driveway for 4 units when it hasn't been 4 residential units in, if ever, or at least, in 27 years by choice when they sought a variance to change the use. I'm concerned of the spot zoning consideration. I'm concerned of everything he said about uniqueness and hardship and size and shape of the lot, which again screams of a ZBA application. But again, if we are going to do it, I would keep it as limited as possible so other people don't try and use it.
I'm fine with it either way, honestly. I thought we were the discussion earlier by eliminating line item D, I thought we were going to broaden it. Again, this is in the apartment zone. It's got other criteria in here in terms of non-conforming lot width, other criteria that will help to control the number of eligible properties, but do it in such a way that we try and not spot zone, right? That we're not doing it specific to this property, which is one of the very few that has in the apartment zone that has a commercial component to it. So
I think we should, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think we should just go ahead and approve it the way it was written. I agree that, I'm more comfortable, looking at long-term revisions, as part of a process.
Was that a motion, Commissioner Knog?
So let me, so
Well, I could make a motion. I could make a motion if you want me to.
let me just,
I move to approve the text changes as written.
yeah, so to that point, let me just finish reading the rest of the conditions here. So item line D, which referred to the commercial use, we'll keep that in there. Item E, when considering the totality of the circumstances, such modification will bring the subject property closer to conformity with these regulations. Item F, the granting of the modification will not hinder or discourage the appropriate use or development of the adjacent property, or the neighborhood, or impair the value of thereof. And item G, the proposed new construction is consistent with all other standards contained in these regulations. So, Mr. Knag, you want to make a motion to approve the text amendment as I just
Yes, as I
presented?
just, yes,
Do I have a
I
second?
so move.
Do I have a second?
Engel, seconds.
Okay.
Anyone want to say how it's consistent with the POCD? 2014 POCD?
Mr. Knag, would you care to include that?
You made the motion.
Well, I think it's consistent with the POCD for the reasons that are outlined in the presentation.
Okay. There are reasons in the presentation, so.
This is Commissioner Chris, I would add to that, it will add senior-friendly housing to our general downtown area, which is a goal of the POC, or
Yeah.
POC.
That was one of the several reasons that was in the presentation, right?
Be more explicit. Never know.
Okay. Call to vote,
When's the effective date? I recommend September 9th.
September 9th.
Okay.
Why September 9th?
So we can advertise it in the paper and then
Gotcha.
that gets published on a Thursday. We make it effective the next Monday.
So
I just asked all the conditions, because we had a whole bunch there on the
This
lands,
is just the text amendment.
just the text
text
amendment.
amendment right now. Yep.
Just the text.
Okay, so we're, September 9th will be the effective date. And we are voting for everyone's clarity, we're voting just on the text amendment that's just discussed. So call to vote, Dan Radman, I vote yes. Krista Nielsen,
Yes.
John Chris,
Yes.
John Engel,
Yes.
Will Knag,
Yes,
Tom Benton,
Yes.
Christina Larson,
Yes.
Eric Knowles.
No.
Then we're going into the application specific. Commissioners' deliberation on the conditions and comments on this. I think we got satisfactory answers out of the design team on the drainage concerns, specifically that the neighbors brought up. The equipment that we talked about, the HVAC and the generators, all of that will be a condition of building permit approval and will need to be shown in areas of compliance inside of the, or outside of the setbacks.
Yep.
Add to that, that they're low noise units with sound barrier at any level. I mean,
So is the landscaping not enough sound barrier? There are fences already, just what?
if
like,
they're going to
what
be between the
additional-
units, they're going to echo through the units. And then you're going to hear them on either side. So I think rather than go the cheap units and put something in there that's going to be loud, I would put a condition that they're low noise units with some sort of sound barriers.
Fair. And then, as far as the concern on the parking and the driveway and the parking spots, we can leave that for them to return to us with a revised design for that area.
Yes. I don't know.
Knew that was gonna happen.
Give me a sec.
It's not
Nobody
even-
move.
It's so weird that it's 11:53 though, like why not
It's early.
midnight?
It's, yeah, 6 minutes early.
I don't know.
Timer's off.
The fact that you know how to do that so quickly is disturbing. I'm just gonna say.
I was gonna say, the number of times that this has happened to
Yeah.
us is disturbing.
Don't get started, please.
So-
So how do we handle that?
So I would just point out, neighbors brought up immense concerns about drainage, and now you want them to come back potentially to add more impervious area, which just taxes the site even more for a drainage issue that already exists. So I don't know if
I
you
was
all thought
suggesting
through that.
pervious area.
Okay,
The whole discussion was to change that potential 3 parking spots to a pervious solution
okay.
that they would have to somehow balance the numbers of the percentage of landscaping and
Okay.
all that.
But weren't we running up against this landscape issue and weren't we supposed to put that in the text amendment?
No, we were saying that they come back with another text amendment and another
Okay,
application
misunderstood. Sorry.
recommending.
Okay. I thought we were amending this text amendment and we've already approved it now and we didn't, whatever. Okay. Got it.
I didn't think we had the
Brain power.
brain power to do
Right.
that tonight.
We don't even know
Thank
how to
you.
keep the lights on.
Back on.
So then, I mean, you need to come up with some sort of condition that gives a timeline of they need to come back before a building permit can be issued that provides, I don't know, how many more spaces are you trying to accommodate an Amazon truck or are you trying to gain more parking or both? I think you
Both.
need to be clear about what
Both,
you're looking to do. Okay.
both.
So the applicant shall return to the commission with an amended plan that creates an additional visitor parking space and provides for loading space or accommodates.
Additional
delivery
visitor, third visitor parking spot / turnaround or, it's not necessarily loading space. I mean,
And
it's
capacity to accommodate
truck maneuvering.
delivery truck maneuvering.
Sure. And that needs to be completed before a building permit can be issued.
Yep, prior to the issuance of a zoning permit.
Right, which,
Yep, which is the building
Yeah.
permit process.
commissioners, is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Issues?
Do we have to instruct them to seek zoning relief if they can't do that in accordance with the regulations? Right, because wasn't there maybe I missed that, wasn't there a landscaping 50% requirement?
They're coming back to us for a second amendment, text amendment, to look for that zoning relief for that 50% landscaping to accommodate it.
And any other relief they may need to accommodate that, I would include,
Correct,
because maybe there's something else they don't know as of this point.
quite possible, yep. Okay. Commissioners, anything further?
Only on the landscaping, we heard two competing points of view on trees and height. And I think it is important that they have agreement with the neighbors on what they put there. So if they're going to put up a tree for screening on their side, but it shades the neighbor's patio, I don't think that's right. So if the only requirement is that it can't be less than 10 feet, that's fine. But I think if it's going to be anything higher than 10 feet, they should agree with the neighbors.
I don't think we should make that a condition. I just think that may be difficult to enforce. And I mean, typically, you want maximum height. So I think if they want to do that on goodwill, that's fine. But I think conditioning that the landscaping is approved by the neighbors and the town having to be the enforcer of that
It'd be tough.
puts the town in a very awkward position.
How do you protect the neighbor? If she's got a small outdoor space and they put up a massive tree and now she has no sun, that's not right.
I mean, that's what the zoning regulations have been since the 1960s.
Yeah, but we're giving on so much on this one.
What if they sell the condo in a year? And the new person that comes in complains that they can see that
Right.
house, you know?
I find this sort of screening is, gee, I don't want it because I have a garden, or I want it because I want to be shaded from or protected from the neighbor. Depends on who your neighbor is.
I think the applicant and that particular neighbor have shown that they can speak to each other and discuss, you know, concerns. So I think it would be better to leave it up to them to work out outside of the commission.
Can we articulate that in the conditions? In that,
I mean, it's on the record right now.
understood,
Yeah.
but in that, you know, the buffer landscaping between the properties and it's the apartment zone shall be no less than 10 feet as per the regulations, and final landscaping solution to be agreed upon or reviewed by and agreed upon between applicant and neighbors.
I mean, that's, if you want to put that, I'm not, obviously I can't stop you all, but again, that's exactly what I'm saying. I have concern about is you're conditioning that the neighbors have to approve of the landscape plan and the town is the enforcer of ensuring that conversation happens. And typically you don't require that. And
What if it's the final landscaping plan shared with the neighbors? So at least they are forced to have the conversation, even if it's not a veto.
I don't think it's a great condition, but you all have the final say.
I'll make my landscaping condition since I asked them and they said it was okay. Let the record show, just repeat it. Okay, this is my thing. So, okay, is that the cherry will be swapped out for a red bud, which is a native. The dogwoods will be native eastern dogwoods. There would be a substitute for the Siberian spruce of a native tree of similar size and dimensions. They didn't say anything about the perennials and ground covers. They just say they're going to be some, and that they would need to update their plan and submit actual names of what they plan for those two items. They didn't provide anything, and they would be reviewed by the town planner, and they would need to be local natives. Pick something. So it's easily filled. You just talk to your landscape architect. They have more than enough choices available.
Okay. Commissioners, anything further on this one? I don't see anything. All right, do I hear a motion on this one?
I mean, I could motion. I would motion for approval with the following conditions. One that the amended plan creates additional visitor parking and capacity to handle truck delivery turnarounds prior to the building permit being issued, or close to that, what you wrote down. Second one, condition that the HVAC equipment is approved on the final building plan and is using low noise units with sound barriers.
That include generators?
HVAC and generators. Thank you. Condition on the trees, but I didn't write down everything you said, so. I heard
It's in
He
the,
has it.
it's in the recording.
Okay.
I will get it.
And then I would like the condition in there that the condition that there is a buffer with no less than 10-foot trees per the regulations, and that the final landscaping plan is at least shared with the neighbors.
Agreed.
Who is sharing it? The town planner or the applicant?
The applicant.
Okay.
should we also make note of how it's aligned with the POCD in this particular?
No, so this
approval?
is the special permit criteria. Text amendments have to align with the POCD specifically on the record.
It's fine.
And this, because of the text amendment, this should have an effective date of September 10th.
September 10th.
With an effective date of September 10th.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second,
Knag. Call to vote. Dan Radman, I vote yes. Krista Nielsen,
Yes.
John Chris,
Yes.
John Engel,
Yes.
Paul Knag,
yes,
Tom Benton,
Yes.
Christina Larson,
Yes.
Eric Knowles.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Administrative actions that we need to take care of. 7365 Luke's Wood Road, Grace Farms Foundation, court schedule. Is it pretty much the same as all previous years at this point?
Yes.
There they are. Same duration too, right?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions?
No.
Okay, no call to vote. Dan Radman, I vote. This is on the Grace Farms court schedule for fall of 2024. Dan Radman, I vote yes. Krista Nielsen,
Yes.
John Chris.
Yes.
John Engel,
Yes.
Paul Knag,
yes,
Tom Benton,
Yes.
Christina Larson,
Yes.
Eric Knowles.
Yes.
Okay. Second item we have is the 2024 POCD selection of adoption public hearing date.
Okay, so we are nearing that time where we are ready to adopt the POCD. Public comment period that's mandated by statute is wrapping up, so we need to nail down a date so we can advertise it with ample time. Just looking at the calendar, when the room's available, various other things, it's looking like October 9th or 10th are the best days for the consultant to make everything work and gives us time to make any edits after the 65-day public comment period. But we need a quorum. We can't not have a quorum. So if either of those days do not work, I don't know if people can check their calendars right now. Are they available? Is the 9th or the 10th better? The room's available both nights, but
10th is better for me.
10th is better. Okay.
I'm good with either.
Either one.
I'm good.
Okay. And we do 7 o'clock
Mhm.
start.
Rest of the commissioners, Mr. Engel.
Yep. Both work for me.
Big
Okay.
day work for me.
The 10th is better for me, but I'll figure it out.
Okay, so it sounds like we'll do the 10th then. I don't see why not. The room's available, so I'll book it tomorrow and I'll confirm everything.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just alert the people who are the commissioners who are on the POCD subcommittee. We will, in all probability, have a POCD subcommittee to address the public comments, including comments from the town council that emerge from the 65-day comment period. That will probably be sometime, well, after the 20th, so latter
Forgot
part
to
of September.
mention that I think the plan is the 23rd. We should
Yeah,
do it
latter
on-
part of September. Just so you know that.
No, but I'm saying we should do it on the 23rd. If that date works, let's nail it down right now.
Okay, fair enough.
23rd of September.
Yep.
So we get meetings 2 nights in a row. Love you, Sarah.
Happy day. I can do the 23rd.
It's a fun month.
Busy. So the 23rd, did we say definitively Wednesday too, that
For
for the meeting itself?
wait, what?
What meeting are you talking about?
The adoption meeting, the special
October
meeting.
10th.
October 10th, yes, definitely.
Sorry.
Okay,
What was the other date you just said? September 23rd?
yeah.
And, you know, commissioners that are not on the subcommittee, you're welcome to listen in on the 23rd to, you know, make sure that you're really acquainted with the plan ahead of time.
I would encourage all members of the commission to, it's on the website, to review the plan. It's substantially complete at this point. There certainly could be some changes, but substantially complete at this point.
And realistically, the 23rd would be the last day that we're really taking edits, because after that, you know, eventually we have to put a pin in it so you all can adopt it. So after the 23rd, it would be time to adopt it.
Agreed.
On October 9.
23rd, I didn't catch it. That's October, or September. What do you?
September 23rd.
September 23rd.
Subcommittee to make final edits, and then October 10th, is the adoption.
October 10th.
Last item on the agenda is the meeting minutes. If anyone has any changes or comments to the meeting minutes, this is for the special meeting we had on July 30th, as well as the regular meeting on July 30th. If I hear no questions or comments, show of hands for approval. Tom?
Aye.
Christina? Unanimous, approved.
I move to adjourn.
We move to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, everyone on Zoom.